This week I read two more chapters from Lessons Learned from Research. Both of these chapters examine alternative ways to assess students' mathematical reasoning. Mathematical understanding. Both studies emphasize that assessment should go beyond checking for right or wrong answers and instead uncover how students think about concepts. The two chapters that I looked at were chapter 25 and 27. Chapter 25 was by Williams, and she studied the use of concept maps as an assessment tool. In her research, students created diagrams that linked mathematical ideas with labeled connections. The results showed that students who developed coherent and highly connected maps demonstrated deeper conceptual understanding, while fragmented maps reflected weaker knowledge. Williams concluded that concept maps made students' reasoning visible and provided teachers with insight that traditional tests might overlook. Just this past summer, I forgot the name of the class, but it was talking about project-based learning, and we did an activity like that where we had to make concept maps from what was the word? I forgot what the word was, but she each gave us a chapter, and we had to look through our textbooks from a word, and we had to make connections from different chapters that focus on that word we was talking about. That assignment was really hard. I know a lot of people that I took the class with did not do the assignment because of how time consuming it was. However, as I took the time to read through the book and find things that connected to my word, I did get a better understanding of what I was learning and what project-based learning meant. I definitely think this would have been, if I would have read this 2 weeks ago, right before we took our unit test, I would have loved to have did this with my sixth grade students. They had a really big problem, a really big struggle with vocabulary and remembering which word was which, especially when it came to mean, median, and mode. I think having them to do a concept map like this, where they had to write the word, write the definition, find some examples that go with it, just to help them remember what the vocabulary word was. I think they would have performed better on their test versus just doing a study guide and then doing a couple activities that enhance the study guide. The second chapter I read was chapter 27 by Lloyd and Wilson, and it investigated assessments through a card sort activity based on functions. Students grouped mathematical representations based on similarities and relationships. Those with stronger conceptual knowledge sorted the cards according to meaningful mathematical connections, while others relied on a surface feature like notation or appearance. This revealed key differences in how students understood functions. The researchers, Lloyd and Wilson, found that card sort gave teachers a practical way to identify misconceptions and to better target instructions. I am a card sort teacher. I love card sorts. I love it in a review. I never thought about it to use it as an assessment because most of the time I have them do it in group activities, and it's kind of, for me, I feel like it's a little bit harder to assess group knowledge versus individual knowledge. So at the high school level, we did a lot of card sorts right before it was time for us to take a test. And I could definitely tell the difference between the students that was paying attention and the student that was not paying attention by how many questions I was getting asked. I don't know how familiar a lot of you guys are with the U teach, but Miss Ezra, she did a lot of our card sorts at Spencer when I was still there, and I love them. They were so engaging for the students, and she always tried to have us do it right before we started a new unit to just gauge and see how much information a student knew on their own. Now that I'm at this middle school level, we still do use card sorts, but it's not as often. Our focus is really to just make sure they have an understanding for their GMAT. And by me just not coming into learning sixth grade and being at the school I'm at, they have like a different way of teaching their students. So it's a little bit more the right or wrong answers versus we're now trying to transition from that and just see how to work with the students to allow them to have their own understanding. But our students' reading levels are so low, it's a little bit harder to do activities like that in the statistical unit. But next, we're moving on to decimals and fractions, and I can see us using card sorts a little bit better, especially with trying to sort similarities and relationships. So I would definitely see how that works. Together, these studies show that meaningful assessments highlight reasoning process rather than just performance. Tools such as concept maps and card sorts make student thinking visible and give teachers valuable feedback for guiding learning. I love doing I liked advanced algebra because I didn't have to do any standardized testing. So I was a little bit more flexible in doing things like card sorts or more project based learning for an assessment versus just a test. I'm not sure how that would work at this sixth grade level where we're trying to bring up our students' reading levels, trying to get their math scores up as well, and then having them to do creative things like creating their own projects or looking at card stores and having to read it and not be given a lot more information. But I'm definitely ready for the challenge and I'll see how it goes.